numbered system. So I was always proudly introduced as someone as son number 1, Gary. Of course, made me feel superior in a way. So to go back in time when we were young, the three of us were a handful, to say the least. Mom one year tried to have a kiddie party, birthday party, for me that went really bad. Something about me pulling off the tablecloth with all the dishes and cake and inciting a kiddie riot. Mom swore that she would not do that again, so Dad stepped in and offered us a day with Dad instead of a birthday party. Dad arranged some quite amazing trips. First, I got to fly to Washington, D.C. with him on a business trip. Then when he saw that flying had interested me and arranged one year to tour 747 at Kennedy Airport shortly after the 747s came out. I got to go up the stewardess elevator and stand for a picture inside one of the huge engines. You can't imagine, you can't do that now. So I'm involved in the music business. Dad loved classical music as well as traditional jazz, New Orleans blues, and that really rubbed off on me. Benny Goodman and drummer Gene Krupa were his favorites. On one of our trips, he took me to see Artur Rubinstein at Carnegie Hall, and another time we all went to Tanglewood to see the pianist Van Cliburn, and someone actually remarked on how well we were behaved, and I don't know how that happened. Music was always on when he was home, and I grew up playing piano and drums and was exposed to quite a wide variety of music, which has helped me with the diversity of projects that I work on. Dad was always encouraging and smartly stressed working behind the scenes technically, which is a lot of what I do now. With all the encouragement, he did criticize me occasionally. During college, our families would be drinking and being merry at our close friends, the Dixon's house, and I'd be talked into playing the piano. The next day, when recovering from a hangover, Dad said, "What the heck were you playing last night?" I said, "Thanks, Dad." Obviously, you didn't have enough to drink. So I sounded like Gregg. That made me practice more and be better. And the last thing I want to say, there's so much to say about Dad it could take all afternoon, but I'd like to let you know how much Dad loved this church and the inspiration that Pastor Margaret and the congregation has given him over the years. I want to say thank you very much. Gregg will now say a few words, but Dad, thanks for leaving us with so much. Love you.
That was awesome. Good job, Dad.
Let's see if I can do the same. I'm Gregg. I'm number 2 son. The better one, middle child, we're also called. But I wanted to tell you a few stories about Dad and his business career at Union Carbide. And Dad was primarily worked in the commercial side of the business for Union Carbide. He excelled in this area and was fortunate enough to travel and entertain employees and customers in many great places. After working 34 years for Carbide, at age 60, Dad retired with a very memorable send-off in Danbury, Connecticut, with the CEO, Warren Anderson, in attendance. Next year, I'll have 30 years with Union Carbide Dow, and was fortunate enough to have worked 2 years with Dad in the business. Pretty amazing that between us, we have 64 years with the same company. You don't hear any of that today. As for his career, Dad was well respected and moved up the company ladder. He treated customers, employees, and colleagues with respect and tried to bring out the best in everyone. He challenged people to be and to do better. He was so valued by the company that he stayed employed even though he was between assignments. As I recall, he and a colleague worked at Morristown Library for about a year doing research until they both landed jobs at a Carbide facility producing pressed-on antifreeze containers and 5-gallon gas containers using Carbide resins, which I now sell. Dad was committed to the customers and company as well as the family. As Chris will talk a little about family outings, I can recall many a family trips where Dad needed to stop at the local Holiday Inn or a phone booth to make an important phone call. He'd jump out of the car and say, "I'll be back in a minute." 30 minutes later, Dad would hop in the car and say, "Let's go." Just think what he would have accomplished if he had a cell phone in his car today. As a sales manager, Dad loved to negotiate the best deal for both parties. He loved the negotiation process, and even as I hear everybody talk around here, Dad was negotiating a better price for this, that, everything. So, except when it came to his Manhattans, which is a drink mixing bourbon and vermouth. Dad rarely accepted the first drink. He always told the bartender specifically that I need dry vermouth, not sweet. And the bartender would bring sweet vermouth. Dad would send the drink back, and they'd get it right the second time. My last story involves Dad and driving. Dad was considered a good driver, no accidents, whatever speeding tickets he negotiated his way out of. But Dad was a real fidgeter. He would be driving down the road, combing his hair, messing in the glove compartment, shaving sometimes, with his eyeglasses, and keeping the 3 boys and a dog in line. Let's not forget that he was always talking to Mom. And he'd just glance at her for a little while and just keep that glance going a little bit too long. Very nervous. And as far as carbide, he would I've heard stories from many different people who drove with him who would talk about Dad and his driving skills. Some of them have said maybe in heaven he'll learn how to drive. But the one thing that Gary, Chris, and I have taken away from his driving skills is his ability to drive with his knees. So he would eat, he would fidget, he would do everything and drive with his knees. It was for a little while, but it still kind of made you a little nervous. A great man, and I'm proud to follow in his footsteps. Love you, Pop.
Thank you.